All right. Well, we're getting started here. I'm going to look and see. I'll set that other screen up to share in just a little bit. I'm here batching it all by myself. Uh, Laura went down to Waco with my sister and some family, my dad's wife and her daughter, and I had a good time yesterday when they first got here. Kind of having a family get together when everybody got Ben and Max coming in tomorrow. Lindsay went down to meet them tonight down in Waco, and I'm about half thinking about going down there after I get off of here. So what? It'd be about 7 o'clock. I get there by 8, right? I don't know. It depends on how fast I can get down there. I don't want to speed or anything, but come on. Um, we have if you're watching this early, this is the Tuesday before. I think it's the 19th, and we're going to be tearing down that old building, old EDU2. We're going to be tearing that down and scrapping it. So we want to invite you to come and help us with that. We've got some of the pieces we kind of know the lay of the land now, how it's supposed to work. So we're going to ask that you come up with your gloves and some work boots. Don't come out in your shorts, and help us. Let's get that taken care of. Get that knocked out real quick. Okay, you got one person on. Let me go out here and put. I got two people on now. Would that be Lindsay and Kaya? Fred and Ethel? Ricky and Lucy? Oh, it's time to start. I don't know. I guess I got a couple minutes left. My clock over here on the side is running a little quick, so we will get started. Hey, Zeb, should I fill up a cooler with ice water for Saturday? Yeah, probably would be. Well, we got ice coolers. If you want to bring like a 24 case of water, that would work. That would work real well. And then we have the coolers, and then we can just throw the ice in there and take care of it that way. But thanks for asking. Pablo went up this morning after coffee talk, and he tore out a bunch of the wall and tore out the center wall. So it's not in the trash bin, but it is all on the ground. Some of it's outside. I'm going to hopefully take care of some of that tomorrow morning when I get up and get some of that thrown away. But man, we got that stuff, and it is amazing how that thing is put together. It is. We were looking at it, so I'm just thinking, for me, anything you hit hard enough with a sledgehammer should come down. But man, that thing. If we ever thought that thing was just going to blow away with a tornado, we were wrong. Before I get started, I want to Kaya. Is the volume okay? Can you hear me okay? Especially when I'm turning my head. I appreciate you guys getting on. Okay, thank you. Well, let's get started. I tell you what. Now, you don't hear me say this very often, but of all the things to teach, I don't like this lesson. And I don't like this lesson because there have been so many charlatans, and I watch them on TV, and there's so many of these prosperity, they sent me $100 seed money, and then God gave them $30,000, and they were able to buy their new camper, and it just drives me nuts. It just drives me nuts. Don't like it. Don't like it at all. So whenever you start talking about money or giving, people are already done, right? I'll watch people start to bail off right now because I don't want to hear about money. But man, it is People think it's hard. Once you get used to doing it, you don't even pay attention to it. I remember a long time ago, I was watching what would it be? It was like a TED talk, but a guy was talking about trying to get his dad to invest. And his dad said, I can't afford it. He said, just 10%. Now, this guy wasn't Christian. He was talking about getting his dad. He's older. What's he going to do? And he said, Dad, if you'll take that 10%, and I promise you, if you get stuck, I'll help you out. Well, he took it, started the investment, and then went back to his dad. And like 5-6 months later, he goes, how you doing? He goes, how am I doing? How's your portfolio doing? He says, I'm doing well. He says, are you missing that? He goes, you know what? I just readjusted and I'm working just fine. And you know what? That's really probably the big key of tithing is you just readjust. You just readjust. Now, sometimes you're going to have to make a decision on whether you're going to keep Netflix or you're going to tithe, but that's the thing that you face. Now, I truly believe, and I believe the Bible teaches us as well, is that you can't rob God, you can't outgive God. Now, at the same time, and I believe that oh man, I am so sorry. I'm gonna dispel maybe some things that you've probably heard in the past. Tithing is in the Old Testament. You see Jesus referring to it in the New Testament a little bit, just referring to it as though it's just that's what you do, sort of thing. Matter of fact, he gets on to the Pharisees in Matthew chapter 23, and he says, you tithe mint, anise, and cumin. That means that they set their seeds down and they tithe out their seeds, little bitty seeds. And he says, now you do this, but then he says but then you ignore the weightier matters of the law, like love and justice and things like that. He says, these you ought to have done, tithing, but don't leave the other ones undone. So you see, he does say, yeah, you should be doing that. Now people go back and says, no, tithing was something that was instituted by Moses, and we're not under the law, so we don't have to do that anymore. Here's something else I want to dispel. There's nothing in the Old Testament that they were told to do that we're not also either told to do, or the standard goes higher, higher, higher in the New Testament. For example, in the Old Testament, you would sacrifice a lamb. When you say, well, see, in the New Testament, we don't do that. No, when you read about it in Romans, he says to present your bodies a living sacrifice, holy and acceptable unto God, which is your reasonable service. You're supposed to present yourself every day as a sacrifice to God, a living sacrifice. Lord, what do you want me to do? Which that tells us that everything that we do, because it tells us we're the temple of God, everything that we do then is part of it, it's God's, right? Our body belongs to God. Had long time ago, kids our youth department, they were like, when as soon as I get 18, I'm going to get a tattoo here. And the teachers were like freaking out, going, what are we going to do? They're not supposed to be getting tattoos. And just worried to death about that. And it's like, here's the deal. You don't come into my house. You wouldn't come into my house, into my room right here with a can of spray paint and go, you know what? I don't like this. I'm going to spray paint it and I'm going to change the color, or I'm going to bring a can of paint and I'm going to change the color. Why would you not do that? I hope you wouldn't do that, because this ain't your room, right? This isn't your house. This thing here is not yours. It belongs to God. So I would tell him, I said, you just ask him, did you pray and ask the owner of this body if it's okay? And if he said it's okay, then go ahead. But if he doesn't, be careful. So there's a lot of things. So what's this have to do with giving? Because I want you to see, giving is about the whole thing. It's not just about, did I give my 10%? Which, by the way, we don't see the mention of 10% in the New Testament because we're told it all belongs to God. Now, Let me see if I can do my fancy work here and get us on this share. No. It's not what I want. Here we go. Screen share. I want to screen share this with you. If you'll turn in your Bibles to Mark chapter 12, Mark chapter 12 in verse number 42. This kind of sets the principle. You say, well, because I don't know, some people or people you may know, they may say, well, I'm on a fixed income. We're all ultimately on a fixed income. So that really doesn't, I only get a limited amount of money. I want to show you something that kind of sets the tone for us to understand what giving is supposed to be about. In verse 42, it says, and there came up, this is hard because I got to work my cursor on this screen and then talk to you on this screen. But anyway, there came a certain poor widow, and she threw 2 mites, which make a farthing. She threw in, and Jesus called unto his disciples and said unto them, verily I say unto you that this poor widow hath cast in more than they all which have cast into the treasury. For all they did cast in of their abundance, but she of her want did cast in all that she had, even all her living. Everything that she had. So we don't see in here, you notice it starts again now in chapter 13. You don't see anywhere in here where Jesus goes, take it out and give it back to her. Or no, she doesn't have to give. She gave everything. She gave the last 2 mites, which he said is a farthing, everything she had. So by us saying, well, I can't give because this is the last $10 I've got, or listen, if it's your tithe, it doesn't belong to you anyway. And the tithe is 10%. Now let me be clear on this. You go, well, after they take out taxes and do this, no. If your gross salary, for example, is $5,000 a month, that means $500 of that is tithe that belongs to God. It goes directly to the church. It goes into the church, period. Now, let me say this. I can't designate a tithe. The tithe goes to the church. That means I can't go, well, take $100 and give it to the missionaries and $100 and give it to the youth department. Now you can, obviously. And if you want to do that, that's fine. But I want you to understand that's not a godly principle to do that. It is you give that tithe, that 10%, that goes to the church. That goes for the operation of the church. Now, here's a misnomer. People think, well, that's what they did in the Old Testament. That's what they did in the temple. You know what? That's not what they did. The 10%, and this may freak you out here a little bit. The 10% didn't go to run the tabernacle or to run the temple. The 10% that everybody gave was only for the priests. For our terminology today, that was their salary. So let me just an example. Don't bail on me yet, okay? Don't bail on me on this, but hear this. So you give. We give the 10% that we're supposed to give. That goes to the church. Now, again, it would go to the priests in the Old Testament. So you see that's different now because we take a portion out to pay salaries and such at our church. All of it went to the priests. That means that if they wanted air conditioning, if they wanted anything else that they did, they had to pay over on that. Because they said, well, here's my $500. I'm giving that. And they go, well, use that to pay the bills. No, that just goes to take care of the priests. Now, in the Old Testament or in the New Testament, we don't do that. It goes to the church and then they divvy it up. So, therefore, for you to say, well, I'm going to divvy it up too, means that we may be taking out of salaries, air conditioning, heating, paying internet bills, all the things that come, just the expenses that it takes to run it. Just to give you an idea, just at Tabernacle alone, it takes anywhere from $18,000 to $20,000 a month to run the things at the church. And we don't always make that because not everybody tithes. Matter of fact, Maybe only about 6% maybe of all the people that show up over the course of a month actually tithe. Now, remember, I said if you made 5,000 a month, 500 belongs to God. It just belongs to God. So if you go, well, I'm not going to give 500, maybe I'll give 200. Okay. Well, that makes you a $300 thief. See, the tithe is just what you give. And you say, well, I want to give it to the missionary. So then maybe you want to give $50 to the missions. Maybe a specific missionary be $550. You see. Now, people don't like this. Like I say, people don't like this. And mainly because we're taking an Old Testament principle and we're bringing it forward into the New Testament. They go, it's not the same. And now I will say this. They are right. It's not the same because it's not 10%. 100% belongs to God. Okay. So my head's going to explode, right? That's why giving the 10% is like, give 10%. Then God says, here, I want you to help with Compassion International. I want you to help raise a young person in a foreign country. You give $40 there and you go, I'm going to give a missionary here, money here. And so that's given. That's what you give to God. Now, let me tell you, give you another thing. I don't know if we'll even get to this tonight, but you can go through it, read it. Is your tithe is not a tip based on how well you like the message. Okay. That's not what that's for. It's whether I preach well or I preach unwell, and you don't like either way, that's between you and God that you give that tithe. It's not you may use it that way as a reflection. I don't like what the preacher preaches, so I'm not gonna give this week. Or he said something that made me mad, so I'm not gonna give it. That should be irrelevant. That's just another piece of worship, right? That's like saying, well, I'm not going to sing and worship God because I don't like the tithe that the preacher wore. That's not me, right? It's ridiculous. They don't correlate to each other, although people want to try to do that, to try to make that correlation. So it's not just 10% in the New Testament. All of it belongs to God. We do the 10% as the base. That means that if you give 20 or 30%, that may be what God would have you to give. But definitely it would never, ever, ever be less than 10. Why? Because that's what they did in the Old Testament. That was just salaries, remember? That was just paying for the priests. That's all that was about. So we see this here where she gave everything she had. So people, well, if I give this, I won't have anything else. That's a reflection of a lack of faith in God. I'm going to give, and I'm going to trust him to give back. And we should. Okay. So I wanted you to see that. Now, let's just as we move through here. So I think as I dispel, also there's some verses that are in here that pastors and evangelists have used over the years to go, God loves a cheerful giver. He does. In that particular, and including tithing, God loves a cheerful giver when they're given their tithes and their offerings. But in some of these passages, like in 2 Corinthians, that is not about a tithe, not at all. That tithe that's back there. That's just what we do, right? That's the price of entry, if you will. That's just the cost to get in. I didn't mean to make it sound like that, but they were giving to help support the Jerusalem church that was having trouble. And so they were picking up an offering, love offering is what it would be. They weren't taking money out of the church coffers. They weren't taking that tithe out from the church. That was an over and above thing. So when you read that, and you say, well, that's what the preacher always used to say, and he's talking about tithing. It's not talking about tithing. Now, we are told to bring all of our tithes into the storehouse, and we're told to do that in Malachi. Now, again, I want to keep this in mind when you hear this, is that if you're not given that tithe, at the very least, it's not, well, that's all I can afford. It's not yours, right? It's not yours to say, well, I need to make a car payment. I need to do this. I need to do whatever it may be. And you go, wait a second. But you would never rob from the IRS to pay someone. You'd pay your IRS, right? Well, God's, God's higher up on the food chain than the IRS. You wouldn't rob from them. You definitely don't want to rob from God. I get blessings when I do it. Listen, it does not make sense. A financial planner, I can't think of the guy's name. I'll think of it in a little bit. The guy's name, you guys may know him. He's a Christian financial planner. And if you know it, just send it down there so everybody else, put it on the notes so everybody else can see it. But here we go. Here we go with this. So I can do more, and I can stretch 90% with God's help better than I can stretch 100% without God's help. Right? Dave Ramsey. Thank you, Lindsay. That's exactly right. Thanks. So hopefully you understand this. There's some things in scripture that we don't read. Most of the time when you read about the letters and stuff, you don't read about them every baptism that they do and all this. So just because we don't see it, people say, well, there's not even any tithing in the New Testament. Well, you see the church attendance requirements in the New Testament? You know why? You guys know, because those of you that have been at Tabernacle for a while, you know why they don't talk about church attendance. Should it be Sunday morning or Sunday night, Sunday morning, Sunday night, Wednesday night? The reason why they did it, or what they didn't really talk about it, is because it was something they did every day. So, I think there's silence on it because it was just like I said, it's just it's the price of entry. They were used to going to synagogue, many of them many times a week. They were used to giving tithes to the synagogue, or taking their tithes to the temple, which is what they would do if they were if they were in Jerusalem. So that was just a normal thing. So we can't go, well, they don't talk about it in the New Testament. That doesn't mean that it's not there. Okay, the principle, even if the specific practice is not in place, you're not, because we don't do this today, right? If we did what we did in the Old Testament, everybody's tithe would come to me. And then if you wanted the lights on, you'd have to pay for the lights, or me and whoever else the staff was, right? Me and Robert and Vincent and Cammie and the musicians and things like that. We would pay that. Because we don't do that, we really rely, the churches, not just ours, rely on that. That's why these big churches have no problem with people wanting to, big churches wanting to come in and hear and not do anything else, because they want you to come in and tithe, and all the combinations of these tithes of, 1,000, 2,000 people help pay those salaries. There's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with that. But the thing that's missed is the personal engagement, right? Well, that's done by professionals. That's not the way it should work. Okay, so if I think through some more things here as we go, so I just want you guys to know that you don't get to designate. You shouldn't ever designate a tithe. You can designate your offering to whatever you want. I want to give it to the youth department. I want to give it to the preacher's lunch fund. We don't have that. Okay, whatever it may be. So, but the primary, the focus of this is that we are stewards, we are servants of God. So and again, I'm repetitive, but I want you, some maybe some new people. Your tithe belongs to God. Well, all your money belongs to God, because He's the one that gives you the power, strength, and ability to even make a dollar. Second is your body belongs to God, and your skills belong to God. So if you say, well, no, my skills I learned and I did, yeah, but you know how quickly and easily God could take that away from you, especially if you don't acknowledge that He's the one that gives it to you in the first place. So it's God's time that you have. So when you say, well, I don't have enough time to do this God's work, I don't have time to, be there to help. I don't see someone at Walmart and I don't help them. I don't have time. And not your time. It's God's time. It's God's time. It's God's talent. and it's God's offerings. It's God's tithes. So let's look at this, and let me show you. Let me throw this up there on the screen. It's 1 Corinthians 6:19. It says, "What know you not that your body?" Here's the one I was talking. Your body is a temple of the Holy Ghost, which is in you, which you have of God, and you're not your own, for you've been bought with a price. That means that. How was my body bought? I was bought heart, soul, mind, and body. I was bought lock, stock, and barrel. Okay. By what was the cost? The blood of Christ. When he bought me, he didn't just buy my soul, he bought all of me. And the beauty of it is he bought this old broken down body, but he's going to replace it with a new body one day, and it'll still be his. Okay. It's all his. So we see that, and he says, you're bought with a price, therefore glorify God in your body. How do you glorify God in your body? What do you do with your body? You work with your body. You produce and excel with your body and in your spirit. So my attitude should belong to God too. So, okay. So, and you see Roman numeral 1 and B, it says, God commands you to present your body a living sacrifice, not just your pocketbook. See, if everything that I have belongs to God, that would include my finances. That includes my time, all of those things. And again, I'm not going through all these, and I know I'm busting. Where am I at? I'm 26 minutes already. You got to realize that true giving begins with our life. So if we give ourselves first, everything else comes. Everything else goes with it. I give myself to you, Lord, but not my money. I give myself to you, but not my career, not my family. And all, see, everything is God's. Everything is God's. So why do I give? Giving proves our sincerity. I mean, that's a, and I know it's hard to believe, it's hard to fathom, but the easiest thing, one of the easiest, that's why we call it jumping over a shoestring. Everybody can jump over 99% of everybody can jump over a shoestring. A baby can step over a shoestring. So we call those shoestring commands. Being in church is a jumping over a shoestring. Tithing is jumping over a shoestring. And our service, reading our Bible is jumping over a shoestring. There's 3 simple things. There's more, but those are the 3 that we can think about as we talk. Why do I give? Because I love God. I'm giving back, and by the way, I'm not giving back the minimum. I'll give it back as I don't think God wants me to give 10. I think He wants me to give 15. I don't think He wants me to give 15. I think He wants me to give 20. So it just, see that? It develops an attitude of grace. And this is what was happening when I was telling you about the church in 2 Corinthians 8, when they were talking about they gave themselves first to the Lord. That's what happens when we begin to give to God and we see God blessing us back with more. And people think, well, if I give to God, then it's kind of like an IRA, right? I put in so much and I get interest and I get something back. Yeah, but it could be that. I've seen that in my life, but I've seen more than just that in my life. For example, there's things that I don't pay for. I don't have in my whole life. I haven't had a lot of medical bills. I mean, I've had knee fixed stuff, but I haven't had a lot of. Why? Because God's taken care of me, kept me healthy. Matter of fact, I got a enzyme deficiency in my body, hereditary somewhere down the line. But when I get sick, my body attacks that sickness, a cold. That's why you don't see me with a cold very often or a flu very often, because if I do get it, it's gone quick because of a defect that God put in my body that's there. It's an amazing thing. But so God blesses with that. I mean, right? I don't have the bills. We don't have the worries that other people have. not just with that, but others, because we're giving and because we trust God with that. I trust God with my talents. I trust God. He gave them, he can take them away. He gave me the ability to work, and he blessed tremendously. And when we say this to you, he did not bless me because I'm a smart person. I am not a smart person. You can ask my wife. You can ask my relatives. You can ask my kids. I am not a smart person, but I'm smart enough to know that I can't outgive God. Let me say it again. I'm smart enough to know that I cannot outgive God. Now, give you another one of these side things. You cannot go, well, let's see. I normally make, $15 an hour, and my tithe would be $100. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to work at the church for 10 hours or 8 hours, and that's going to be my tithe. That's not your tithe. You know why? Because it's not your time and it's not your body. It belongs to him. Okay? So when you own it, when it becomes yours, you can do that. But it is not yours, and it never will be yours, no matter what you may do with it. So that's why you can't. The tithe is on its own. The tithe is giving back to God, and you can read in Malachi chapter 3. He says, "Wherein have you robbed me? You've robbed me in tithes and in offerings." Now, wait a second. I thought it was the tithe was a requirement. Yeah, but if Lord lays on your heart to help somebody or to help a missionary, and then you don't give, then that's a robbery. That's a robbery. So let me move on. Who's the person that benefits the most from this? You go, well, yeah, people I'm giving. No, you're the one that benefits the most from this, because all you're doing is saying, God, you gave me all of this, but I'll at least give you back 10% of what it is you gave me, even though I know it all belongs to you. Okay. Number 3, where do you give? Okay, here's another one. People think, well, I give to, I send money to Joel Osteen, and I send money over here. I send it to First Baptist of Dallas, and I send it all to these different places. Your tithe is localized to your church. Now, I know there's some people that go church hopping. They go this church and that. Well, they need it, and so we gave it there, and we need. That's not how that works. You're connected to one body, and then you are to tithe within that one body. If you want to give an offering, for example, I think I used First Baptist of Dallas. Okay, so I'll use it again. So as a member of Tabernacle Baptist Church, my tithe goes to Tabernacle Baptist Church. No ifs, ands, or buts. That's just how it works. Then you can say, well, I don't believe that. Doesn't really matter. That's how it works, right? When in the Old Testament, when they gave their tithes, they didn't go, well, I'll give it to the high place over here, to the high place over there, or I'll give it to that altar over there. It all went to one place. It went to the place where they went to worship. As a member, I give there. Now, but I say, you know what? First Baptist of Dallas has got this great program, and I want to help with their feed. They have a feeding the homeless thing, and I want to give to them. You give to that. Okay, God's led you. You give to that, but not the tithe. The tithe goes to your local church. You go, well, it doesn't matter where I give it. It will if you come into the church and the lights are off and there's no air conditioning or heating because we couldn't pay the bills. Now, you say, well, that's ridiculous. Every church is going to have see it the same way. That tithe is required if is to keep the church up. Now, here's another thing. If people say, well, a lot of people do this, whether they know they do it or not, they only tithe when they show up for church. So if they don't show up for a month, they may not tithe that month. It's not, you don't do that either. Because whether you show up or not, people still want the air on and the heat on and pay the folks that are there. So you can give outside the local church, but the tithe belongs in the tithe itself. So I'm going to give 40%. I know 10% goes to the church. Another 10% is going to go to missionaries at my church, and I'm going to give to the Burleson, Harvest House in Burleson. That's fine. That's great. But just know the offerings is what God leads you to do over and above the tithe. Okay, so the tithe is really a non-negotiable, and it's not you don't designate. And by designate, I mean, okay, of my tithe, I want you to do this. Tithe takes care of the bills. That's it. Tithe, takes care of the upkeep and the operation. So anyway, let's move on. So what does my money go for? We obviously supporting the leaders in the church, and you can read there on that, because I'm running on time here, running out of time. So we get paid. Now I'll tell you, with our church, the church doesn't pay our either Robert or I, which are the two guys. The church does not pay either one of our full salary. Okay. I know for Rob, it's probably paying 1/5 of what he actually makes, and in my case, it's about 55%. I pay the rest of it myself. So even within our church, you see, we're not fully supported. I'm basically the same as a bivocational pastor. Okay, so. And Robert's would be the same as bivocational. We give other works like the Macedonian church was doing, and like what the Corinthian church was doing, giving an offering over and above to help support, in this case, the Jerusalem church. Okay. Now let's jump over to another one real quick. I want to show you something here. Ephesians 4:28. Okay. Now you see that it says, "Let him that excuse me, let him that stole steal no more." So he's talking about how when a person gets saved, how their lives to change. He goes, don't give place to the devil. Let him that used to steal don't steal. Stop stealing. But rather let him labor, working with his hands the thing that is good. If you want to get money, work for it. But he says this: not only work for what you need, but also work so that you can give to others in their need. So imagine you go, you know what? I have a choice. I can have. I use Netflix as an example for. I'm paying, I don't know how much it is, $20 a month for Netflix. But I could take that $20 a month for Netflix and help a missionary. You see, you do those things. God's saying, make sure you have enough money, not just so you can tithe, but so you're carrying around money is to carry around to give to somebody else. That's the kind of money it is. Okay. We do building programs and such like that. We have saved over my tenure of being there. We've probably saved well into the 70, 80, some would even say $100,000 because we do the work ourselves. We have people within the church that do it. So if we have to go out and hire everyone to do it, people to go do everything, and we hire people to do the air conditioning, and we hire people to do plumbing, some electric, but that's been a long time ago. Because we have people within the church that can do that. So if we had to go and pay for people for all the stuff that's done at the church, we would be broke. So as a church body, we do what we can. Why? Because if we have the ability to do it, then we can do it. So how much am I supposed to give? Again, the Old Testament talks about 10%. But you need to know this, the 10%, remember what I said, 10% in the Old Testament went to high priests, the priests. Now you go, remember I told you that tithing occurred before Moses because Abraham gave 10% of all he had to Melchizedek. He gave 10% to the priest. Didn't say he gave it to any church, he gave it to the priest. Then we see the same thing happening when Moses, because that 10% goes to them. And then there would be more that we need money for this, to build this or to do that. And then they would bring in that over and above. So you had these different mechanisms of bringing in money to help in different areas. churches today, there may be churches that do it. If they do, I don't know who they are. That all of the tithe goes to the pastor and the staff, and then someone else gets it for paying the light bills and insurance and all that kind of stuff. So 10% in the New Testament is a starting point. Obviously, it would be much more than just 10, but 10 is, if you're tithing 10%, at least you're not robbing God. And you say, well, what could that mean? We lose the blessings of God, and let me assure you, I see it all the time. I see it all the time. I see people that won't tithe. God takes the tithe. He'll take his tithe. You might have 50 car wrecks and have to replace your car 50 times. God goes, it'd be a lot easier if you just tithe. He takes it. You can't outgive him, and you cannot rob him. So I just want to, you can either be blessed with it or you can be cursed with it. And it's not a good thing. Okay. So again, we see that in number 5 and 1a or B1a, it was first given with Abraham. We've already talked about that. And it was well before the law. So they go, well, that's the Old Testament law. No, it's before the Old Testament law. And he gave 10%. New Testament, the 10% isn't the end, it's the beginning. So, and let's turn over to the other side here. God established early, and I'm looking at D, early in creation, he designates certain things to himself. Abraham, it was designated by God 1/10 of his earnings. So God designates these things. You see it throughout the Old Testament. You do. You really see it where God wants you to remember where it came from, right? You go, I'll remember it. No, you honor him with the minimum 10, because you're saying, God, I trust you. I realize what you've done, and I'm giving it to you. Now, number 2 there, offering in the New Testament principle, as a man purposeth in his heart. You give as the Lord gives you the ability, not the tithe. Okay. It's the offering. God says, I want you to, again, help in a ministry, help pay someone's trip to camp. That, paying for somebody's trip to camp is not tithe, it's offering, right? When you do those things like that. So don't do it grudgingly. You're doing it because you're excited to see what God's going to do with it, right? What's God going to do this? And it's an act of love. It should be an act of love, not of obedience or drudgery. Now, people say, well, if I'm not giving cheerfully, then I shouldn't give at all. Well, let's play that again. If I'm not going to give it cheerfully, then I should just rob God. Does that make sense? It really doesn't, right? So the general principles of giving: give as God prospered you. What does that mean? Well, you remember, you're dealing with a farming community, an agricultural community here. So sometimes they'd have good crops and sometimes they wouldn't have good crops. So as God's prospered you, you never see a place in Scripture where a person is giving his tithes and offerings and he doesn't get blessed well above what they had given to God. God prosper. Remember what I told you earlier? God, you cannot and will not ever outgive God. You give beyond your power to give. Sometimes, and sometimes you have to reallocate your life, right? You have to go, you know what? Can't have Netflix and tithes, so I got to get rid of Netflix. You go, what will I do? I don't know, but I wouldn't rob God with it. I wouldn't rob God to watch Netflix. I don't even know what's on Netflix. The grace of giving. When you see how God blesses you, and you do really have to pay attention, because God will bless you and you go, I didn't even see that. What was I, and I'm so concerned about not making it sound like it's prosperity giving. And it's not prosperity giving. It's prosperous giving, because you can't outgive God. Okay. And then there's the law of sowing and reaping. You reap what you sow. If you sow robbery, you're going to get arrest, right? God's going to come down on that. But if you're sowing your tithe, God's going to bless the tithe. If you're sowing your tithe and offering, God's going to bless it. The more that, those that give generously, God gives back generously. Those that give and I've known people in the past that if their tithe was $29.37, they wrote a check for $29.37. Heaven forbid they give God $30, right? That's grudgingly or of necessity that it's referred to, that we saw being referred to in 2 Corinthians 9:7. Okay. You build this and you're investing in your local church. You're investing not just in the church and the lights, but keep in mind, when the lights are on and the air conditioning is comfortable and the heating is comfortable for people to come in, they're not preoccupied with other things so that they can focus on the messages that are being preached. And as you know, we go every service time we preach a morning worship service. It is about the gospel being preached and them hearing the gospel. So you think, well, preacher, you get blessed because you preach and then they get saved. But everybody that gave that paid for that air conditioning to be on and the lights to be on, and that bought the sound equipment and bought some of the musical instruments that we have, and the TV screen and the computer to run the words, so people, all of that comes into play. So see, when you're giving for that, you're giving not just to keep the lights on, but you're giving so that people will have a place, especially the lost, will come to have a place to learn about Jesus, and those that are saved to grow in their relationship with Christ. So you got your questions there. I am at 45 minutes. I'm at 46 minutes. I want to cut off. But if you have questions, let me ask right now. There's 5 of us on. Is there anybody that does have any questions? If you do, type it in real quick, and I'll try to answer it. And then if you do have, if any of you that are on that are there for Wednesday service, please ask, because these are important questions. Is there anybody have any questions? Are you typing it in right now? Because it doesn't show me if anybody's typing, and just once you pop up. So I'm assuming that nobody has any questions then. God bless you. Read through this. I rip through this fast, and hopefully I've maybe dispelled any bad things that people think about it, but also that terrible man. So many people are fighting against God, and they don't even know why. Why is it? And we have enough troubles. We have enough troubles in our life without robbing God on top of all that, right? Especially when exceeding great and abundant blessings come when we do give. So I want to encourage you to do that. Again, if you have questions tomorrow night at the Bible study, please ask. God bless you guys, and I'm going to go find me something to eat. Talk to you later.